Chapter 1046. If an alchemist didn't cultivate to the extreme and grasp the essence of the fusion of medicinal properties, it was impossible to control the combination of the violent medicinal properties and the power of heaven and earth when refining pills. The final result would only be a failure at the last step. Yu Qingwei took a different approach and used the alchemy method to avoid the risk of explosion. The refined medicinal liquid also had the effect and nature of a medicinal pill. It was indeed very clever. However, this wasn't a pill elixir. When Luo Qingtong looked at the pill elixir refined by Yu Qingwei and smiled, everyone below the stage looked at the pill elixir that was gradually taking shape in the cauldron. It had an aura different from ordinary elixirs and they immediately exclaimed in surprise. Many people saw the refinement of a pill elixir for the first time and didn't expect that it could be refined like this. Senior Sister Yu is really smart. Yes. However, one must be incomparably familiar with the medicinal properties of the elixir and even grasp the essence of it. Otherwise, even if the power of heaven and earth is introduced, there's no way to make it fuse with the elixir. Just this alone proves that Senior Sister Yu's alchemy skills are extremely powerful. It seems that Senior Sister Yu will win for sure this time. Yes. Senior Sister Yu's move is already the pinnacle of alchemy. In the future, when Senior Sister Yu's understanding of medicinal properties is a little deeper, she might become an alchemist. Unless that honorary chief can refine pills, just refining medicinal liquids, even if he can refine a perfect transcendent grade medicinal liquid, he still can't compare to Senior Sister Qingwei. Yes. Senior Sister Qingwei's pill elixir has already transcended the scope of medicinal liquids. Everyone below the stage discussed animatedly. Especially those students from the pharmaceutical department. Even if they had received the grace of Luo Qingtong's medicinal liquid formula, their confidence was shaken at this moment. After all, no matter how exquisite Luo Qingtong's alchemy skills were, it was still within the scope of an alchemist. But Yu Qingwei's pill elixir at this moment showed the method of transitioning to alchemy. It was clear at a glance who was better and who was worse. Ha! Seeing that Yu Qingwei really refined the pill elixir, Mo Chenxian burst into laughter. He cast a sidelong glance at Luo Qingtong and sneered, the pill elixir has already come out. I don't know what other methods the honorary lead disciple has to contend against him. If you don't, then admit defeat as soon as possible. I'm still waiting to collect my winnings. When he said this, he laughed coldly and proudly, waiting for the other party to come down with a face covered in dirt. However, Luo Qingtong didn't even look at him. Senior Apprentice Sister Qingwei's strength is indeed formidable. However, what Senior Apprentice Sister refined is not pill elixir. Luo Qingtong smiled at Yu Qingwei. Yu Qingwei was indeed very strong. If nothing unexpected happened in the future, she should become an alchemist. However, what she was refining right now could not be considered a pill elixir. Luo Qingtong's words stunned everyone. If what Yu Qingwei refined wasn't called pill elixir, then what was it called? This is clearly a pill elixir. The Qingwei group's people glared at Luo Qingtong. Don't slander our leader just because you can't beat her. Luo Yiran and the others were very angry. They thought that Luo Qingtong said this because she couldn't beat Yu Qingwei and didn't want to let the Qingwei group off easily. This was simply too much. Isn't this honorary lead disciple a bit shameless? Chapter 1047. Pfft. What do you know? I think she's afraid of losing face as the honorary chief disciple, so she deliberately said that. That's right. Don't compete if you can't afford to lose. I'm speechless. Such a person can also be the honorary chief disciple? Did the Grand Principal and the rest make a mistake? The crowd below the stage whispered to each other. Su Xiaoxiao and the others glared at them for a while. What are these people talking about? How could Boss be the kind of person to slander others? If she said it's not a pill elixir, then it's definitely not a pill elixir. As soon as their words came out, they immediately provoked mocking laughter from all around. Pfft, if you say it's not a pill elixir, then it's not a pill elixir. That aura is obviously different from the elixir. And we saw it refined with our own eyes. It's fused with the aura of the elixir. How can it not be a pill elixir? That's right. You heavenly demon group people are also quite shameless. I thought you were not bad before, but now it seems that you're also a pile of trash. All kinds of voices came from all around, making Su Xiao Xiao and the rest angry. They knew Luo Qingtong's identity. As the evil Dr. Ghostai, Luo Qingtong did not need to use such a dirty method to slander Yu Qingwei. But without Luo Qingtong's permission, they could not casually say the other party's identity, so they could only secretly sulk. 12 However, just as his voice fell. With a swoosh, the thick smoke on the stage dispersed, revealing the scene inside. In an instant, the pride in Mo Chinchuan's eyes froze. The noise and the surroundings also disappeared in an instant. Everyone looked in shock at the golden-colored liquid in the medicine cauldron with a rich aura. Waves of aura were emitted from it, rising and falling along with the fluctuations of the liquid. A burst of indescribable, refreshing and pleasant medicinal fragrance spread out in all directions. Everyone smelled this aura and looked at the pill elixir, refined by Yu Qingwei not far away. They immediately felt the huge difference in it. Even Mo Qinxian and the others, who harbored the greatest malice and wanted to deal with Luo Qingtong and the others, when they looked at the comparison between the two liquids, they had to admit that in comparison, the liquid refined by the honorary chief disciple could be called a real elixir. If one were to say that Yu Qingwei's pill elixir contained the aura of a pill, then Yu Qingwei's pill elixir could be said to be a medicinal elixir. Then, what Luo Qingtong refined was like the liquid form of a real medicinal pill. The difference was so great that no one could go against their conscience and say that Yu Qingwei's was better than Luo Qingtong's. What the latter refined was true pill elixir. Everyone looked at the cauldron in front of Luo Qingtong. Only now did they understand why she had said that what Yu Qingwei refined wasn't pill elixir. The difference between the two was simply too great. But how did Luo Qingtong do it? Everyone was shocked. Even the students of the Sacred Institute who didn't know anything about alchemy knew that once the refinement process started, it was either a success or a failure. If it succeeded, it would become a pill, and if it failed, it would become a waste. The loud sound on the stage just now was clearly the sign of a cauldron explosion. Why wasn't the cauldron in front of the other party destroyed, but instead refined pill elixir? And the aura in it was already no different from a real medicinal pill. Everyone looked at Luo Qingtong in shock. As for the Grand Dean and the head of the Medicine Institute, they were also shocked. Chapter 1048. I got it. His eyes flickered as he looked at Luo Qingtong, who was on the high platform. His eyes were filled with surprise. You didn't fail. That loud sound just now wasn't a furnace explosion. The Medicine Institute's master spoke frankly, as if he had discovered a new continent. He looked at Luo Qingtong with amazement. You were refining the elixir just now. That loud sound was the sign of your success. He looked at Luo Qingtong and said with certainty, I've read in ancient books that there was a transitional process before an alchemist became an alchemist, and that was to refine a semi-finished elixir. I thought that the semi-finished elixir was refined by Qingwei, and the elixir's aura was integrated into the elixir. But now it seems that it wasn't like that at all. Instead, during the refining process, she omitted the final step of condensing the elixir. The elixir refined like that is the real elixir. Because condensing the elixir is the most important process in refining elixirs. After successfully condensing the elixir and going through the baptism of heaven and earth, it can be called a real elixir. And when an ordinary alchemist becomes an alchemist, this is the most difficult thing to control. I was wrong. I thought it was the fusion of heaven and earth energy with the elixir. As soon as the Medicine Institute's master spoke, everyone knew what was going on with the elixir Luo Qingtong refined. No wonder the other party's elixir's aura smelled no different from a real elixir. That was because the elixir she refined was only one step away from completely forming the elixir. What was a real quasi-alchemist? This was a real quasi-alchemist. She was only one step away from successfully refining the elixir. Everyone was shocked. Only now did they know how powerful Luo Qingtong's alchemy skills were. Yu Qingwei had only grasped a little bit of alchemy. But Luo Qingtong had already grasped more than half of the alchemy ability. Just by looking at this comparison, it was clear who was more powerful between the two. While they were overwhelmed with shock, they did not know that the shock in the hearts of the elders of the medicine institution and the Grand Supreme Headmaster was even more intense than theirs. One had to know that they knew Luo Qingtong's identity as the evil Dr. Ghost Eye, and that she was an alchemist. Under such circumstances, how the hell was she going to transition? She didn't have this transition process. Therefore, if Luo Qingtong wanted to refine the elixir, she could only crush the elixir the moment it was formed. Waste pills turned into liquid. The alchemy prowess displayed here was astonishing. Even those old monstrous alchemy grandmasters wouldn't be able to do this, right? One had to know that in the process of refining pills, the slightest mistake would result in the entire pill being scrapped. Who would dare to play like Luo Qingtong? If word of her actions were to spread, it would be extremely frightening and unbelievable. The two of them were deeply frightened. Then, he was pleasantly surprised. Luo Qingtong's alchemy skills were too frightening. As long as she was here, the Empire of Qin's holy institution's alchemy prowess would be unparalleled. In that event, they would definitely amaze the world and wipe away their previous humiliation. The two of them were pleasantly surprised, but the rest of the Qingwei group were only frightened. Now that Yu Qingwei had lost, their plan to write off their grudges with the Heavenly Demon group had failed. Thinking that the other party would be punished by the Heavenly Demon group for them, the group immediately knelt down and said to Luo Qingtong on the high platform. Chapter 1049. They were going to plead with Luo Qingtong, but the girl was not here, so they could only plead with the honorary chief of the pharmaceutical department. Since the other party stood up for the Heavenly Evil group, she must have a good personal relationship with Luo Qingtong. Luo Qingtong should listen to her. No one doubted that the mysterious honorary chief of the pharmaceutical department was Luo Qingtong. In the eyes of the crowd, Luo Qingtong came from a low-level country, and it was already a blessing for her to have such talent and strength. How could she have such powerful alchemy skills? Their deep-rooted thinking made them never think that the other party was Luo Qingtong. Yes. Luo Qingtong looked at them and nodded. She did not intend to pursue the Qingwei group. It was just right that she agreed to their pleading. She just needed to ask them to apologize. With this thought, Luo Qingtong immediately left. When the crowd in the medicine battle arena recovered from the shock, the masked girl was no longer on the high platform. They were enthusiastically discussing the other party's identity, and where did the Grand Principal find this genius? The Grand Principal and the Grand Principal of the pharmaceutical department were also surrounded. But they kept their mouths shut, and no one asked. The instructors and students of the pharmaceutical department were dying of curiosity. At this moment, Luo Qingtong, who had finished changing, reappeared in the medicine battle arena. She stopped Mo Qinxian and the others, who were pale and wanted to leave the medicine battle arena when no one was paying attention. Your Highness King Wu is in such a hurry, where do you want to go? Could it be that you can't wait to fulfill the bet? Luo Qingtong's voice sounded, and the crowd, who were immersed in the atmosphere of joy, surprise, and shock, suddenly looked over. They saw Mo Qinxian, whose face was ugly, being stopped by Luo Qingtong at the entrance of the medicine battle arena. Only then did the crowd remember that there was a bet between them. Oh my God! There was a good show to watch. Thinking of the bet between Luo Qingtong and Mo Qinxian, everyone gathered around excitedly. Seeing that everyone was looking at him, Mo Chinchuan's face darkened. "Luo Qingtong, don't go too far." He gritted his teeth and spat out each word. He thought that since the girl hadn't come, he could leave quietly. At that time, when Luo Qingtong and the others came to ask to fulfill the bet, he could make an excuse and say that he wasn't here. In this way, this bet would naturally be over. But he didn't expect that Luo Qingtong would rush over at this time and block him at the gate. This made him extremely embarrassed. Was this woman doing this on purpose? In fact, Luo Qingtong did it on purpose. She had just arrived and saw that Mo Qinxian and the others were about to leave when Su Xiaoxiao and the others were not paying attention, so she deliberately waited for him at the gate. Didn't she catch him at the right time? "Your Highness, you must be joking." Luo Qingtong looked at Mo Qinxian indifferently, and the smile on her lips was indescribably evil. She raised her head slightly and looked at him casually with a smile. "I didn't propose the bet. I didn't set up this bet. How can this be me going too far? Or is it that you can force me to fulfill the bet, but it's wrong for me to let you fulfill the bet? There's no such logic in this world, right?" As soon as Luo Qingtong's words came out, everyone instantly remembered Mo Qinchuan's arrogance when he thought that Yu Qingwei was going to win. Chapter 1050. Under such circumstances, he said that Luo Qingtong had gone overboard. This was a bit of a distortion of the truth, and it was inexcusable. What was more, this bet was indeed set by Mo Qinxian himself. The content of the bet was also set by him. How did it become that Luo Qingtong had gone overboard? He was not forced to bet by others. Everyone thought so, and suddenly looked at Mo Qinxian with indescribable contempt. Although they did not dare to do so blatantly because of the latter's identity, the meaning in their eyes was very obvious. It seems that His Highness King Wu wants to go back on his words. Yes, he is so shameless. He was so proud and arrogant just now. Yes. He wants to run away after losing, but he is so arrogant after winning. Whispers could be heard from all around. Mo Qinxian listened with an indescribable look on his face. At this moment, Ma Qinye's voice sounded. "Brother, it is said that one must accept defeat. I'm afraid it's not good for you to do this, right?" The handsome and elegant young man walked out of the crowd with his hands behind his back, followed by a group of people from the Gui Yuan group. He looked at Mo Qinxian, who looked terrible, and said with a faint smile, "I will be the witness of this matter. If you don't want to fulfill the bet and want to go back on your words, then I will have to enforce it. I'm afraid you don't want to see such a result, do you?" He looked at Mo Qinxian with a faint smile, but the threat and coldness in his words were very obvious. Ma Qinyu would definitely not mind helping Mo Qinxian fulfill the bet, and he would feel more comfortable by then. Mo Qinxian obviously knew this. If he really let Ma Qinyu do it, he was afraid that he would suffer more humiliation than now. With his identity as King Wu, others did not dare to do anything to him, but Ma Qinyu did not have any scruples. Thinking of this, he suddenly gritted his teeth angrily and said, "I will fulfill the bet." As soon as these words came out, Mo Qinxian almost broke his teeth. Thinking of how humiliating the bet he made with Luo Qingtong was, he was so angry that his blood rushed to his brain, and he almost fainted to the ground. But Mo Qinxian knew that even if he fainted, Luo Qingtong and the others would wake him up and ask him to fulfill the bet. These two be asterisk cheese. "Ma Qinyi, it won't be long before you die a horrible death. And that bitch Luo Qingtong." Mo Qinxian was angry and resentful, but he had to take action. For a moment, the words "I may be asterisk tch" resounded in every corner of the Saint Academy of the Empire of Qin. Mo Qinxian almost vomited blood and fell to the ground several times while running. He gritted his teeth and persevered. However, when he finished running 10 laps and the whole Saint Academy of the Empire of Qin almost knew he was IB*tch, the people sent by Ma Chenyi to collect the debt for Luo Qingtong arrived. At this time, Mo Chenxian remembered that in addition to the humiliating bet with Luo Qingtong, he also bet a large sum of money with the other party. He bet the whole fortune of the King Wu's mansion, thinking that he could cheat Luo Qingtong and the others. But unexpectedly, Yu Qingwei lost. He was facing a huge amount of money. Thinking of the gambling odds he set, Mo Chenxian was so angry that he could no longer control the surging aura in his body. In an instant, he spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted. Luo Qingtong did not stay in the drug battlefield for long. Chapter 1051. She believed that the other party would naturally teach Mo Chenxian a lesson. It was better to leave it to him than to leave it to anyone else. It was the truth. For the sake of that bet, Mo Chenxian almost tore down the entire martial imperial mansion. But he couldn't do anything about it. Mo Chenxian was so angry that he almost vomited blood. At this moment, Tong Hu and the others came back. Your Highness, this is the information you wanted. A group of people respectfully handed over the information they had received. Mo Chenxian opened it with a gloomy face and then sneered. Good. Good. He cheered. It's just as the master of the Soul Institute said. He sneered and said, send this news to the master of the Soul Institute. I want Luo Qingtong and the others to be consigned to eternal damnation. Mo Chenxian had found out that Luo Qingtong didn't have any ice soul imprint talent. She was just an ordinary martial artist. How could a martial artist use Yu Wenma's soul skill? Like Su Diheng said, Yu Wenma must have used a forbidden and evil sorcery. Just this point alone was enough to consign Luo Qingtong to eternal damnation. At that time, the Empire of Qin's Holy Academy and even the Holy Dynasty of the Empire of Qin would not tolerate her. At that time, he would teach her a lesson. Mo Chenchuan's face was cold. He was really screwed over by Luo Qingtong this time. The entire martial imperial manor was almost an empty shell. Not only that, but it also became the laughing stock of the Empire of Qin's Holy Academy. The news of him running 10 laps around the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin and shouting that he was Ibi *tch spread out from the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin. It almost spread throughout the entire holy capital of the Empire of Qin. When Mo Chenxian went out now, he felt that everyone he met was laughing at him. He was going to be the crown prince of the Empire of Qin and the ruler of the Holy Dynasty in the future, but he had to bear such a stain. He would become the laughing stock of others for the rest of his life. Even if the other party feared him because of his power and status, they could still laugh at him without restraint in private and in their hearts. Thinking of this, Mo Chenxian wished he could eat Luo Qingtong alive. He didn't think that it was because he wanted to plot against Luo Qingtong that he ended up in this state. He would only think that the other party was being disrespectful to him. Mo Chenchuan's eyes were gloomy and cold. After sending the message to Su Diheng, he smiled gloomily. Luo Qingtong, I'll make you wish you were dead this time. Previously, he had wanted to use Su Diheng to force evil Dr. Ghost Eye to make a move, then think of a way to get the other party to play in his backyard. Even now, he would still do the same. However, after playing with that bitch for a bit, she would be thrown into a brothel. She had caused him to suffer such heavy losses. Naturally, he had to make it up to her. As for Ma Chenyi, Mo Chenxian sneered. Luo Qingtong's incident this time was really an excellent breakthrough point. He didn't need to wait until the future. Perhaps he could pull him down in one fell swoop. At that time, the Empire of Qin and the Holy Dynasty would be under his control. Without Ma Chenyi, who in the royal family would be able to compete with him? When he became the crown prince, and with the help of that grand event, he would enter the realm of his dreams. By then, the old man sitting on the dragon throne would have to give up his position. Thinking of what he had done to the emperor of the Empire of Qin, Mo Qinxian laughed loudly and was very proud of himself. At the same time, in the residence of the Soul Institute Master in the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin. Chapter 1052. The aura of the noblewoman was not weaker than that of Su Diheng. She had an extraordinary aura. Her entire body, including her red hairpin and jade bracelet, seemed to be a very powerful spiritual weapon. Jinyue, my daughter. The noblewoman was lying at the head of Su Jinyue's bed. She looked at Su Jinyue, who was neither a human nor a ghost, with a sorrowful expression. What's going on? After crying for a while, she turned around and looked at Su Diheng, who was standing behind her with a dejected look. She said angrily, my daughter was fine when I left. How did she become like this? Su Diheng. Is this how you take care of my daughter? She looked furious. Who on earth did this to her? Shen Chuyue did not expect that her daughter would become like this after she was summoned back to the celestial palace. Su Jinyue grew up in the palm of her hand. She gave her everything she wanted and spoiled her to the extreme. But today, someone made her look like a ghost. When Shen Chuyue came back, she almost thought that she had seen a demon at first glance. If it weren't for Su Diheng holding her back, she would have slapped her daughter to death with a slap. As the external deacon of the celestial palace, she was quite respected in the 4 great holy dynasties. Even if she went to the other 3 holy dynasties, the experts there had to be respectful to her when they heard of her identity. Now that her daughter had become like this, how could she bear it? Shen Chuyue's face was furious. Her gorgeous face, which was like a hibiscus in autumn, now looked like a ghost. I suspect that it's Luo Qintong. Su Diheng's face was as gloomy as hers. He and Shen Chuyue doted on their daughter. Even if Su Jinyue broke the sky, they would be there to support her. Now that she had become like this, how could he not be heartbroken? He told her about his conjectures and the recent happenings. Shen Chuyue's face became more and more furious. That Luo Qintong is so arrogant. Shen Chuyue did not expect that not only was her daughter bullied, but her husband was also humiliated. And the Grand Dean and the others were still helping her. When she heard this, she could no longer bear it. She stood up and said, I'm going to waste her now. Let's see what Zhu Feng can do to me. Her face was gloomy. Zhu Feng was the name of the Grand Dean. Shen Chuyue called him by his name, as if she did not put him in her eyes. In fact, it was. The celestial palace she came from was a sect in the hidden world, and its ranking wasn't weak. Of the celestial palace, Shen Chuyue was an outer court deacon, and she had only killed a student of the Great Qin Sacred Academy. She didn't believe that the Grand Principal would dare to do anything to her. However, as soon as she got up, she was stopped by Su Diheng. No. Su Diheng shook his head. Zhu Feng and Ma Chenyi are not obstacles to us. But that Luo Qintong is said to be related to evil Dr. Ghost Eye. You also know that behind evil Dr. Ghost Eye is the Blackfield's underworld venerable. We must have a good reason to deal with her. Furthermore, my daughter's appearance, which is neither human nor ghost, is very likely caused by that evil Dr. Ghost Eye. Even if it's not, we can only ask him for help if we want to cure her. We can't touch Luo Qintong now. Chapter 1053. If it weren't for his daughter and the evil Dr. Ghost Eye, he wouldn't have stopped Shen Chuyue. In fact, in his opinion, if Luo Qintong hadn't entered the Holy Academy of the Empire of Qin, maybe nothing would have happened to them. Even if the human-faced ghost sore on Su Jinyue's body wasn't caused by her, it should have been caused by her anger. Not to mention the humiliation he suffered and Yuan Ma's crippling. All of these made Su Diheng wish he could kill Luo Qing immediately. Blackfield's Mingzun. Shen Chuyue was still angry, and she had a feeling that Su Diheng wouldn't give up no matter what he said. However, when she heard the words, Black Fields Ming Zun, her body instantly froze. Shenchuyue relied on her identity as an outer elder of Celestial Palace to look down on most of the powerhouses of True Spill Continent. But only the Black Fields Ming Zun, Celestial Palace, and even many sects in the hidden world didn't dare to provoke him. When she heard the name of Yi Qianxian, her aggressive attitude suddenly weakened. So, we can only let that little bitch be arrogant. She felt a burst of hatred in her heart. Su Deheng was about to say something when suddenly, Tong Hu and the others asked to see him. Su Deheng let them in. After hearing their intentions, he took the message from them. After he finished reading, his eyes lit up. Okay. After sending Tong Hu and the others away, Su Deheng laughed and looked at Shenchuyue. Madam. We have a reason to deal with that little bitch now. He said and told Shenchuyue the content of the message sent by Mo Qinxian. Then he said to her, this time we will force her into a desperate situation. Let her ask the evil Dr. Ghost Eye to save her daughter. Su Deheng said coldly. Shenchuyue glared at him and said, it's rare that we have something on her, of course we have to kill her. You're really old and muddle-headed. Since she has a relationship with the evil Dr. Ghost Eye, we can force her to let the evil Dr. Ghost Eye treat our daughter. Who knows what he will do to our daughter? Not to mention. You said that the evil Dr. Ghost Eye is backed by the Black Fields Ming Zun. If she asks him to help her with the Black Fields Ming Zun, what could happen to Luo Qingtong? Shenchuyue's Ming Zun's Ming Zun. While it just so happens that in these 2 days, my sect's outer sect elder, Elder Xie, will be coming. When the time comes, I'll ask him to help me mediate and invite the evil Dr. Ghost Eye from the Black Field to treat our daughter's poison. This way, by the time she knows that something happened to Luo Qingtong and wants to avenge her, it will already be too late. Not to mention, she might not even help Luo Qingtong. After all, who knows if Luo Qingtong is her subordinate? Chapter 1054. Luo Qingtong didn't know this yet. She was taking a stack of things from Yi Qianxian at the moment. What are these? Luo Qingtong blinked and looked at these things in front of her. Aren't you going to deal with Mo Qinxian recently? These are things that are useful to you. Yi Qianmin said as she gently stroked her hair. Her eyes were filled with indifference. He wanted to kill Mo Qinxian last time. But Luo Qingtong stopped him and didn't let him do it. He knew that this woman must be useful to Mo Qinxian. In this case, he helped her to collect some things from Mo Qinxian's power, so that she could use them when she wanted to kill him. Oh. Luo Qingtong responded and then looked through these things. The more she looked, the brighter her eyes became. When she saw that Mo Qinxian even killed the holy emperor of the Empire of Qin and did something to him, Luo Qingtong suddenly jumped up from the chair and threw herself on the man who was sitting lazily on the couch. Ha! With these materials, it's much easier to deal with Mo Qinxian. My lord, you are so nice. Luo Qingtong's eyes narrowed, and she laughed so hard that her eyes could not be seen. It involved many secrets of the royal family of the Empire of Qin. If it weren't for Yi Qianxian, Luo Qingtong might not be able to find it out. Mo Qinxian was the king of martial arts of the Empire of Qin, and he was known as the first person after Ma Qinyi. Over the years, some people had regarded him as the candidate to replace the crown prince of Ma Qinyi in the future. Under such circumstances, it was still a little difficult for Luo Qingtong to kill him. Now that Yi Qianren had made a move, everything was resolved. Luo Qingtong kissed Yi Qianxian on the lips. Seeing her action, Yi Qianxian's cold eyes, which seemed to contain countless blood swords, suddenly narrowed. He tilted his head and kissed the girl's lips. After kissing for a while, he snorted in a low and hoarse voice, "Since I am so nice, why don't you give yourself to me?" This woman only knew how to coax him with sweet words. Luo Qingtong's eyes turned slightly, and then she said, "Okay," she said with a smile. Yi Qianming's hand that was staring at her suddenly froze. Then, she abruptly turned around to look at her. "What did you say?" "I said give yourself to me." "Okay," Luo Qingtong said with a smile, calm. Before Yi Qianxian could show his happiness, the girl took out the little pig from her sleeve and stuffed it into his arms. "Okay. Use this to give yourself to me." "Humph." Yi Qianxian snorted and threw the little pig away. "I am not interested in its body." Luo Qingtong had already died of laughter. She laughed so hard that she fell into Yi Qianxian's arms. Her clear eyes, which were rippling with a faint mist of blood, were soaked with tears, as if they had been washed by water. Her feather-like eyelashes were covered with fine droplets of water, and she looked indescribably cute. Luo Qingtong demonstrated how to repair the man's meridians in her mind. She wanted to see what his meridians looked like when he was at his peak, and then compared it with his current situation to see where the problem was. However, the numbers on the meridian diagram in Luo Qingtong's mind only jumped twice. In an instant, with a bang, the blood-red light in Luo Qingtong's eyes suddenly extinguished. Her vision went black, and a sharp pain and dizziness hit her. In an instant, her body leaned back and fell backwards. "Qingtong." Seeing her fall backwards, Yi Qianxian's eyes instantly shrank. He raised his hand and pulled her into his arms, not letting her fall backwards to the ground. "What's wrong with you?" Chapter 1056. I just overused my mental strength. Everything in front of her was pitch black. She had used her eye technique too much, causing her to temporarily lose her sight. Yi Qianren also noticed the strange look in her eyes. He narrowed his eyes slightly and raised his hand to gently caress the corner of her eyes. "You can't see." His voice was low, slightly hoarse, and mesmerizing. It's nothing. I'll be fine in a while." Luo Qingtong didn't hide the abnormality in her eyes in front of him. If it were anyone else, she definitely wouldn't let them discover the secret of her eye technique. But Yi Qianxian was different. She had already exposed most of her secrets to this man. And after spending so much time together, she was already used to trusting him. If he wanted to harm her, he wouldn't have waited until now. Yi Qianxian nodded and didn't ask any more questions. But he didn't let go of Luo Qingtong's hand. Instead, he tightened his grip on her hand. He had long known that her eyes were different from ordinary people's. They seemed to be able to see through everything in the world. Luo Qingtong's various amazing abilities seemed to come from her eyes. This woman had many secrets. But so what? Just like how his heavenly vein body was different from others, what was so strange about her having her own unique abilities? But this woman's abilities were a bit too coveted. Spirit Array Master, Alchemist, Weapon Refiner, as long as it was something that could be seen through with her eyes, she could do it with ease. If others knew about her abilities, she would probably be captured by those large sects and sacred grounds and raised in captivity. She would live a life of imprisonment like a puppet. She would neither live nor die, living like a tool. This was something Yi Qianxian couldn't tolerate. He had to protect this woman firmly. Let her fly freely under his wings, without any scruples. Luo Qi, become a bit stronger. Yi Qianxian gently stroked the girl's smooth face and said in a low voice. That deep voice seemed to drill into Luo Qingtong's ears and into her heart. Only if this woman became stronger could he eliminate the hidden dangers in his body. Only then would he be able to protect her better. Yes. Luo Qingtong nodded. She also felt that she was too weak compared to Yi Qianxian. She had thought that being a martial emperor would be enough for her to probe the other party's body. However, she had not expected that she would exhaust her mental strength as soon as she started probing. This man was truly a pervert. Luo Qingtong raised her hand and poked the man's chest. In the past, it was always others who called her a pervert. Now it was her turn to scold this man. However, Luo Qingtong was never one to admit defeat. The stronger Yi Qianxian became, the more motivated she became. Sooner or later, she would crush this man under her body. Luo Qingtong muttered to herself as she looked at Yi Qianxian's devilishly handsome face. Her eyesight had already recovered. Don't poke randomly. Yi Qianxian groaned as he grabbed Luo Qingtong's small hands that were randomly poking his chest. Did this woman know that this was ***? She had just poked the 2 points on his chest several times. Yi Qianxian was afraid that if he didn't grab her now, he wouldn't be able to hold himself back. Don't play with fire, he said in a hoarse voice. Otherwise, don't blame this sovereign for forcing you. Did this woman really think that he was Lu Xiaohui? She wanted to try poking him again. Chapter 1057. You'll have to be able to catch me first. She laughed. There was a hint of arrogance in her innocence, and an indescribable charm in her wickedness. Especially that pair of bright and colorful eyes, which gave people an indescribable feeling of intelligence and dazzling as they turned craftily. It made her look very charming. Why don't you try? Yi Qianxian looked at Luo Qingtong like this, and his eyes instantly darkened. The emotions inside were surging, more turbulent than before, and undercurrents were surging. He didn't mind if she gave him a chance to make a move. When he caught her, he would never stop. Then forget it. Luo Qingtong looked at him, and her pair of claws, which were held by the man, were indescribably restless. Her unyielding character made her want to continue poking. However, Yi Qianxian's words were too threatening. Luo Qingtong felt the man's unblinking gaze on her. She thought for a moment. Yi Qianxian was all on her now. If he poked her, there would be no chance for her to escape. Thinking of this, she immediately gave up. A wise woman submits to circumstances. She smiled and held the man's hand, saying, "Come on, business is more important. I'll continue to look at your meridians." Yi Qianxian was amused by her crafty look. He knew that this woman wouldn't dare. Cunning. He snorted and pulled her into his arms. His action was overbearing and gentle. See. He snorted and lowered his head, kissing the girl fiercely. Then, he restrained himself and let her go. Luo Qingtong responded to him with a smile, not hiding her little thoughts and cunning at all. Anyway, in front of this man, her nature had been exposed. So what if she was scared? So what if she only knew how to take advantage of him? Luo Qingtong smiled and transferred the aura in her body into Yi Qianxian's body. This time, she didn't use her ocular ability to restore the man's meridian map like before. Yi Qianxian was too strong. She didn't have enough mental strength to restore his full strength, so she might as well save her energy for something else. Luo Qingtong's aura circulated in his body, just like what she had done to Yi Qianxian in the past. At the same time, she activated her ocular sorcery, which had recovered, and watched as her power flowed through the man's body. Under Luo Qingtong's eye technique, she saw the power she had transferred into the man's body move around in his body and seep into his meridians. Then, another wave of energy came out from it and flowed into her aura. Luo Qingtong snorted softly. When the energy returned to her body after a cycle, she stopped it. What's wrong? Yi Qianxian raised his eyebrows as he looked at her and stopped checking his body. Something's wrong. Luo Qingtong told Yi Qianxian what she had just checked. Before me, did anyone check your body and find something like this? No. Yi Qianxian said straightforwardly. The drawbacks of the heavenly vein body were obvious. It wasn't that no one had checked his body to find an opportunity to extend his life. But without exception, no one had found anything. Only Luo Qingtong, Yi Qianren lowered her head to take a look at her own body. She could clearly feel that her meridians had become stronger. Chapter 1058. That's strange. Luo Qingtong knitted her eyebrows. If only her aura had an effect, then it meant that there was something in her aura that Yi Qianqian's meridians needed. Wait a minute. Luo Qingtong's eyes suddenly lit up. Tian Mingzi said before that I have an innate mixed-element body. Does this have anything to do with it? She looked at the man in front of her, her expression full of hope. If this was the reason, then Yi Qianxian could find another innate mixed-element body. Her strength alone wasn't enough to restore a man's meridians. But if there were a few more people, then it wouldn't be a problem. Luo Qingtong thought and guessed, could it be because I have an innate mixed-element body that can absorb all the power in the world, so after my aura circulated in your body, it absorbed some of your aura? Then this aura was assimilated by my aura, and when it entered your body, it was mistaken for your own aura and then absorbed back, strengthening the meridians in your body. She thought that this was the only reason that made sense. But she just didn't know if this innate mixed-element body was easy to find in this different world. In fact, Luo Qingtong didn't know if this body came from the original owner or from herself. If it was because of the injection of her soul that caused the original owner's body to change and become the same as her previous life, then it would be troublesome. Because Luo Qingtong didn't care about anything in her previous life, she could learn it as soon as she learned it. Although she was ranked first in the ability world, her strength wasn't limited to eye techniques. She had practiced all kinds of martial arts without any hindrance. In fact, if it wasn't for the lack of spiritual energy on Earth in the 24th century, Luo Qingtong might have been able to cultivate successfully. This was also the reason why Luo Qingtong was quickly familiar with the power system and martial arts cultivation here after transmigrating to this different world. Otherwise, even with the eye technique, she wouldn't have been able to immediately use the original owner's power to kill all the black-clothed people when she transmigrated. That shouldn't be the reason, Yi Qianxian said in a low voice. If that's the case, then storing the energy in my body and transferring it back to my body, wouldn't it strengthen my meridians? But in reality, he looked at the beautiful girl in front of him with sparkling eyes. The strength of my meridians has always been weakening. He looked at Luo Qingtong and nodded slightly. In this world, the one who wants me dead is the heavenly Tao. Therefore, what Luo Qingtong said about his power being assimilated after entering her body and then being absorbed by his own power to repair his meridians was impossible. Otherwise, with the strength of his heavenly veins body, how could his meridians be so weak? Therefore, Luo Qingtong's power was able to repair his meridians. There must be other reasons. Heavenly Tao. When Luo Qingtong heard him say this, she remembered the special nature of Yi Qianqian's heavenly veins body. Before, she subconsciously treated Yi Qianqian's condition as a general difficult disease to treat. But in fact, Yi Qianqian's condition wasn't an illness. She was able to repair his meridians not because of her medical skills. It was because of another reason. Luo Qingtong thought so and frowned. Apart from her innate mixed yuan body, was there anything special in her body that Yi Qianxian needed? Chapter 1059. Luo Qingtong shook her head as she thought of this. Her Do technique was an auxiliary ability, which had nothing to do with the power in her body. This shouldn't be the reason. Luo Qingtong couldn't think of anything, so she could only give up in the end. It couldn't be because her power was more delicious than Yi Qianqian's, so the way of heaven absorbed her power and let go of Yi Qianqian's meridians, right? She curled her lips as she thought of this, and then suddenly froze. Wait. The way of heaven absorbed her power, but it didn't absorb Yi Qianqian's. Luo Qingtong carefully recalled this sentence that suddenly appeared in her mind, and she seemed to think of something. If the way of heaven could absorb her power, it wouldn't absorb Yi Qianqian's. Then could they find a way to replace it with something else? Luo Qingtong thought of this, and in an instant, a certain thought in her mind became clearer. Yi Qianxian was the same as her. Maybe he also went astray on this matter. She remembered that the man had told her before that except for her, other people's power had no effect on the meridians in his body. But if he didn't have the power of people, what about the power of things? Luo Qingtong thought of this, and in an instant, the light in her eyes became brighter and brighter. She suddenly threw herself into Yi Qianxian's arms and said happily, "I got it." She told him all her thoughts, and then said to the man, "You've tried countless ways. Have you tried to guide the power of some kind of treasure into your body to see if it can weaken the weakening of your meridians by the way of heaven?" After hearing her thoughts, Yi Qianxian was also thoughtful for a while. Then he shook his head and said, "No." He used to treat the weakening of his meridians as a kind of disease. He relied on the power of the medicinal liquid to temporarily repair and stabilize the strength of his meridians. But as he became stronger and stronger over the years, those medicinal liquids were no longer useful. Elder Yu was also helpless. Now that he heard Luo Qingtong's idea, he felt that he might be able to give it a try. Luo Qingtong also had the same idea. She nodded seriously and said, "Go and collect some treasures related to the power of the heavenly Tao. Who knows, maybe one of their powers can counteract the power of the heavenly Tao that is weakening you." The weakening of Yi Qianxian's heavenly vein physique came from the mysterious influence of the heavenly Tao. Since his power was effective against him, perhaps those treasures would be effective as well. Even if he could not completely cure the hidden danger of the man's meridians constantly weakening, he could try his best to prolong and reduce the heavenly Tao's influence on him. "Yes. I'll give it a try then." Yi Qianxian nodded. Indeed, he had never thought of such a method before. Once he was done with the matters here, he would return to the other side to collect such treasures. Ha! Luo Qingtong laughed happily. If this method really worked on Yi Qianxian, that would be great. In this way, the hidden danger in the man's body could be controlled to a certain extent. Once his strength increased in the future, he could specifically help him investigate and see what exactly was in his body that affected his meridians. Then he could prescribe the right medicine and completely solve the hidden danger in his body. Luo Qingtong thought like this, and suddenly her heart was greatly shaken. She continued to pour her aura into Yi Qianxian's body, circulating it in his meridians. Both of their auras were slowly changing and strengthening. Chapter 1060. His aura overflowed like a gentle breeze, blowing his and Luo Qingtong's sleeves and hair. Inside the room, it was as if they were outside in the courtyard. While Luo Qingtong was in this cycle, the man's aura constantly mixed with her aura and surged into her body, causing the aura in her body to constantly rise. However, her current cultivation was not as weak as before. When Yi Qianxian's aura entered her body, it was no longer uncontrollable like before, soaring like a rocket. This made Luo Qingtong feel a lot more relieved. The two of them were busy in the room for most of the day. When Luo Qingtong's aura no longer had any effect on Yi Qianxian's meridians, Luo Qingtong's strength had entered the level of a low-level martial emperor in this continuous cycle. Although she did not know how much Yi Qianxian's strength had recovered, the dignified and deep aura around him had deepened a lot. The blood-red sword in his eyes was even sharper, as if it was going to materialize and rush out. Luo Qingtong knew that Yi Qianxian's strength must have recovered a lot. No, the word recovered could not be used. The man's strength had always been there. It was just that because of the limit of his meridians, he could not exert it. "How much have you improved?" Luo Qingtong looked at Yi Qianxian with a smile and asked. "Now I should be able to exert 1/10 of my strength." Yi Qianxian felt the strength in his body and narrowed his eyes slightly. "I'll go out for a while." As he spoke, he dashed out of the room with a whoosh. In the courtyard outside, Feng Yu was hiding in a dark corner. Then he heard Yi Qianxian's voice. "Follow me." He wanted to find a place to test his strength. Yes. At this time, Feng Yu also felt the difference in his master's aura. Suddenly, his eyes lit up and he rushed out with Yi Qianxian. Seeing the two figures disappear in the courtyard, Luo Qingtong's lips twitched and then she fell asleep. After working for half a day, she was exhausted. She did not even have time to check the situation in her body before she fell asleep. The next morning, Luo Qingtong woke up with a yawn. There was still no sign of Yi Qianxian. She did not know where he and Feng Yu went to test their strength. However, when Luo Qingtong thought of Yi Qianxian's extraordinary strength, she knew that the two were definitely not near the holy capital of the Empire of Qin. Otherwise, she did not know how big a commotion. She wanted to get out of bed and wash up. Then, she began to check the condition of her body. Her strength was already at the level of a low-level martial emperor. However, there were no signs of breaking through to the mid-level martial emperor. After all, Luo Qingtong's current strength was no longer like when she was at the martial master or great martial master level. She could not break through by just absorbing a little bit of Yi Qianxian's strength. Moreover, after reaching the martial emperor level, she could only rely on her own comprehension to advance. It was impossible to rely on external forces. After all, at this level, she had already begun to touch the power of heaven and earth. It was not just a simple increase in strength that could continue to advance. As Luo Qingtong thought about it, she stopped probing her body. At this time, Su Xiaoxiao and the others' voices came from outside. Chapter 1061. Luo Qingtong stepped into the hall. In the hall, Yu Qingwei was waiting with a group of people from the Qingwei group. Seeing Luo Qingtong come in, she immediately stood up and nodded to her. "Junior sister Luo, I brought them here to apologize." Yu Qingwei had wholeheartedly accepted her loss in that battle. That masked girl's alchemy skills were simply too strong. Her title as the honorary lead alchemist was well deserved. And the people from the Qingwei group were extremely grateful to Luo Qingtong for not pursuing Yu Qingwei's responsibility. They were originally going to apologize after the battle. But because of that battle, Yu Qingwei had been inspired by Luo Qingtong's pill refining process and went into seclusion for a while. Her alchemy skills had greatly improved. That was why he had waited until today to apologize to the Heavenly Evil group. "Junior sister Luo, we're sorry." Luo Yi ran and the others stepped forward and bowed to Luo Qingtong after Yu Qingwei's words. They were already filled with regret for the previous matter. Speaking of which, they didn't have any conflicts or grudges with Luo Qingtong and the others. Just because of Mo Yufei's words, they had developed prejudice against Luo Qingtong and attacked the Heavenly Demon Group. They couldn't blame anyone else for falling to this state. They apologized one by one. Especially when facing Su Xiaoxiao, Luo Yi ran and the others were even more sincere. Their faces were burning with pain. They had ruthlessly humiliated Su Xiaoxiao before, but the result was that they were slapped in the face by her. Standing in front of Su Xiaoxiao now, they were really embarrassed. Their previous arrogance had all turned into unbearable memories. They wished they could dig a hole and hide in it. After the Qingwei group finished apologizing, Yu Qingwei looked at Luo Qingtong and nodded. "Junior sister Luo, please help me tell the honorary lead alchemist that I thank her this time." Yu Qingwei didn't know that the honorary lead alchemist was Luo Qingtong. She had benefited a lot from the battle this time. He had truly entered the realm of a quasi-alchemist. In her opinion, if the other party had not pleaded for leniency, Luo Qingtong would not have forgiven the Qingwei group so easily. Thus, Yu Qingwei was very grateful to him. "Sure." Luo Qingtong looked at her and smiled. At this moment, she saw Yu Qingwei say, "But I won't give up on His Highness. Junior sister Luo, I will compete with you fairly in the future." Pooh! When Luo Qingtong heard this, she almost choked on her own saliva. Oh my God! When she came back to her senses, her first reaction was that it was a good thing that Yi Qianxian was out. Otherwise, who knew what would happen if he heard what she had said? This was simply too deceptive. Little Pig, who was squatting on her shoulder, also twitched his lips. You misunderstood. I have no relationship with His Highness. Luo Qingtong waved her hand and hurriedly clarified her relationship with Ma Chenyi. She didn't want to carry the title of Ma Chenye's love and Ma Chenye's love. It wasn't that she was afraid of what Yi Qianxian would do to her if he found out. She was afraid that he would cut off Ma Chenye's head. Then the latter was simply too wronged. Really? On the other side, Yu Qingwei was still bashfully challenging Luo Qingtong. When she heard this, her eyes suddenly lit up. She looked at Luo Qingtong with pleasant surprise. It's true, it's true. Luo Qingtong hurriedly nodded. Yu Qingwei didn't want to cause more trouble for Ma Chenyi. If Yi Qianxian really misunderstood, Ma Chenyi wouldn't know how unlucky he would be. Chapter 1062. Good. I believe in you. Yu Qingwei looked at Luo Qingtong and solemnly nodded. Her eyebrows rose up, her eyes filled with joy. Then I'm sorry, junior apprentice Sister Luo, I misunderstood you. After learning that Luo Qingtong wasn't her love rival, Yu Qingwei's entire being seemed to come alive. She was originally a quiet young girl that had walked out from a painting of an elegant lady. Now, her entire body was brimming with vitality. Hearing that, Luo Qingtong heaved a sigh of relief. She waved her hand towards Yu Qingwei, about to speak. At this time, a group of people rushed in from outside. Luo Qingtong. This group of people wore the uniform of the Holy Academy's Council of Elders. They coldly looked at her and said, someone reported that you cheated in your gambling match with Yuan Mo and used evil techniques. This matter is of great importance. Please come with us. As these words came out, Su Xiaoxiao and the others were startled. They originally wanted to ask why they had rushed in. That's impossible. It's impossible for my boss to use evil techniques. Su Xiaoxiao and the others were no longer the same as when they had just entered the Holy Academy. They naturally knew that being accused of using evil techniques was a serious accusation. In the true Spill continent, martial artists and soul cultivators that used evil techniques were the most despised. This was different from forbidden techniques. No matter how sinister a forbidden technique was, the ones that were harmed were the martial artist and soul master that used the forbidden technique. But evil techniques were different. If one said that forbidden techniques sacrificed oneself to harm others, then evil techniques harmed others to benefit oneself. Forbidden techniques harmed oneself to obtain strength that surpassed oneself. But evil techniques robbed others to obtain strength that one didn't have. The nature of these two were completely different. In the true Spill continent, once someone that used evil techniques was discovered, they would immediately be besieged and hunted down. But in the four great holy dynasties, evil techniques were explicitly forbidden. Once discovered, they would be severely punished. Luo Qingtong had been accused of using evil techniques. Once this crime was established, crippling her cultivation and banishing her would be a light punishment. As Su Xiaoxiao and the others thought this, their hearts were suddenly filled with unspeakable anger and anxiety. Humph. Whether or not it is true, we'll know once we arrive at the Holy Academy's Council of Elders. The leader of the law enforcement team of the Sacred Academy said. Take him away. He waved his hand fiercely. Immediately, a group of law enforcement team members behind him rushed out and grabbed Luo Qingtong. Boss. Seeing this, Su Xiaoxiao and the others panicked. They rushed forward and stood in front of Luo Qingtong. Right at this moment, stand down. Luo Qingtong's voice sounded. Then, her body suddenly moved. Bang bang bang. The members of the law enforcement team, who were trying to grab Luo Qingtong, screamed and flew backwards. Their bodies crashed heavily onto the ground. When the leader saw this, his expression suddenly changed, and he glared at Luo Qingtong and said angrily, "You dare resist? Luo Qingtong, are you admitting that you used evil techniques and want to escape punishment?" As he said this, he looked at Luo Qingtong with vigilance, his hand already holding the signal to gather everyone. Luo Qingtong coldly looked at them. She waved her hand and brushed off the dust on her sleeves, her voice cold. "I'll go with you. But, if you dare to touch me again, I'll cripple you." The young girl's eyes flashed with a faint blood-red light. Chapter 1063. Luo Qingtong would never be courteous to those who dared to lay their hands on her. Did these people really think that she was a prisoner? Luo Qingtong sneered. With a wave of her sleeve, she walked towards the elders of the Holy Academy. She already had a premonition that someone was trying to deal with her. "Boss." Seeing Luo Qingtong walking towards the elders of the Holy Academy, Su Xiaoxiao and the others quickly followed. They didn't believe that Luo Qingtong would use sorcery. With the latter's strength and ability, how could she need to use sorcery to win against Yuan Mo? Knowing Luo Qingtong's identity and strength, Su Xiaoxiao's people didn't believe a word of the Holy Academy's law enforcement team. However, it was true that someone was trying to deal with Luo Qingtong. They didn't know who was so vicious. They actually framed their boss with such a crime. It was really hateful. Su Xiaoxiao and the others thought and immediately gritted their teeth. After they left, the people of the Qingwei group also looked at each other for a while. They didn't expect that when they came to apologize, they would run into such a thing. Luo Qingtong used sorcery to deal with Yuan Mo. This crime was not an ordinary one. If it was true, then Luo Qingtong would definitely be crippled. They looked at the girl next to them who was like a willow tree. "Senior sister." They looked at her inquisitively. "Let's go and take a look together." Yu Qingwei pondered for a moment and said. Then she said to a member of the Qingwei group, "Go and inform His Highness the Crown Prince that something happened to Luo Qingtong. Tell him to hurry to the elders of the Holy Academy." "Let's go." Yu Qingwei didn't have much interaction with Luo Qingtong, but the girl didn't look like someone who would use sorcery. There might be something going on. Thinking of how Ma Qinyi protected her, Yu Qingwei thought for a while and decided to take people to take a look. The elders of the Holy Academy supported Mo Qinxian. For the sake of Ma Qinyi, Yu Qingwei naturally couldn't just watch and do nothing. What's more, after this gambling battle, Luo Qingtong did not continue to pursue the matter of the Qingwei group. Yu Qingwei still owed her a favor. With that thought in mind, she immediately said to the Qingwei group member, "Also, inform the Grand Dean. Let him know about it." After explaining everything, Yu Qingwei and the others immediately headed towards the Holy Institute's elders. At the same time, in the Elders Guild of the Sacred Academy, Su Diheng and Shen Chuyue were already waiting there. Beside them sat Mo Qinxian, whose face was full of joy. "I didn't expect Great Teacher to change his mind and not let go of Luo Qingtong. This is exactly what I want." Mo Qinxian smiled and said to Su Diheng. He also greeted Shen Chuyue respectfully. Shen Chuyue was the person he had been trying to win over. Chapter 1064. Thinking of this, Mo Qinxian felt indescribably happy. He said to Su Diheng and Shen Chuyue, "Since you two hate Luo Qingtong so much, why don't you send her to me for training?" He smiled viciously and said, "It just so happens that I also have some grudges against her. I have plenty of people under me who can teach her a lesson and make her wish she was dead. I don't need to dirty your hands." "Okay." Shen Chuyue sneered. "Then I'll leave her to you. I will take Jinhue to see what kind of miserable situation she is in at that time." Su Diheng also sneered and nodded. Killing Luo Qingtong directly was certainly not better than torturing her and then killing her. Anyway, as long as it was confirmed that she used witchcraft, who knew what would happen to her after she was expelled from the hospital? Even if she was kidnapped by them, no one would know. At that time, they would see how miserable Luo Qingtong was, which could be regarded as revenge for Jinyue and Yuan Mo. In the seats of the elders of the Sacred Academy, the first elder of the Sacred Academy and others also looked cold. Humph, I didn't expect that Luo Qingtong would have such a day. The people of the elders of the Sacred Academy hated Luo Qingtong no less than Su Diheng and Mo Chinxian. Since they were slapped in the face by Luo Qingtong when they tried to expel her from the hospital, they were completely excluded from the core of the Sacred Academy. All the core of the Sacred Academy was controlled by the Grand Dean's faction. Not only that, they also became the laughingstock of the Sacred Academy of the Empire of Qin. When they heard that Su Diheng and others sued Luo Qingtong for using witchcraft, they immediately sent people to catch Luo Qingtong. Not only that, they also had the same idea as Mo Chinxian. The latter wanted to lead the matter to Ma Chenyi. They wanted to shift the blame onto the Grand Supreme Dean. After all, how could someone like Luo Qingtong, who came from an inferior country, come into contact with things like witchcraft? Naturally, someone had given it to her. What kind of person was that? The group of elders from the Holy Academy sneered. The biggest possibility was evil Dr. Ghost Eye. But who would find trouble with her? They would only put this hat on the Grand Supreme Dean's head. As for evidence, wouldn't it be easy to forge? As long as they could confirm that Luo Qingtong had indeed used sorcery, they could guarantee that the Grand Principal would not be able to get away with it. Apart from that, there was also the Crown Prince. By then, he would be able to kill 3 birds with 1 stone, and the matter would be resolved perfectly. As for the evil Dr. Ghost Eye, as long as she wasn't an idiot, she wouldn't jump out and say that she was the one who gave him the sorcery. What's more, he might not even know about this. By the time she found out, the matter had already been settled. Chapter 1065. Because they suddenly realized that something was wrong with the cry. It didn't seem to be a woman's voice, but a man's. Thinking of this, they immediately raised their eyes and looked ahead. With one look, their faces were instantly filled with rage. Luo Qingtong. What do you mean by this? At the front gate, the golden bronze door was wide open. The figure who was kicked in was lying on the ground. A figure dressed in fiery red clothes suddenly walked in from the gate and stepped on the figure. Only then did the elders of the Sacred Academy see clearly that the red figure was Luo Qingtong. And the figure under her foot was the member of the law enforcement team they sent to catch Luo Qingtong. Luo Qingtong. Seeing that the scene before them was completely different from what they had imagined, the group of elders from the Sacred Academy was infuriated. You're too arrogant. The crowd shouted angrily. This woman had already been exposed for using sorcery, but she still dared to be so arrogant and wanton. Did she really think that they wouldn't dare to do anything to her? Or did she think that the Grand Dean would be able to protect her? Unfortunately, she was wrong. Not to mention her, even the Grand Dean would be in trouble today. Facing the anger of the elders of the Sacred Academy, Luo Qingtong looked indifferent. She looked at them with a sneer and said, "Elders, what do you think is not arrogant?" As she spoke, she kicked the figure of the law enforcement team away with a sneer. She had just said that if anyone dared to touch her again, she would cripple them. But they still dared to do it. Did they think that she wouldn't dare to do anything to them at the elders of the Sacred Academy? Luo Qingtong's face was cold. Her eyes swept over the law enforcement team members who came in behind her. First elder. Elders. The law enforcement team members limped in while supporting each other. They looked at Luo Qingtong with fear and resentment. Especially the leader of the law enforcement team. This woman dared to cripple them. And in front of the elders of the Sacred Academy. How dare she? His expression was one of shock and fury. He was the one who had ordered the law enforcement team member to sneak attack Luo Qingtong. She had thought that Luo Qingtong would not dare to make a move after arriving here since she was so fierce. However, she didn't expect that she would directly cripple the law enforcement team member who had just made a move. The leading member of the law enforcement team was about to pounce on him. After Luo Qingtong made her move, he didn't dare to move. Great elders, you must uphold justice for us. The group of people knelt on the ground and cried. We were ordered to capture her, but she beat us up. Elders, Luo Qingtong is completely ignoring the rules of the Holy Academy and the Elders Association. The group of people knelt on the ground and cried. The members of the Elders Association of the Sacred Academy looked at the group of law enforcement team members who limped in from outside and almost fainted in an instant. It turned out that Luo Qingtong not only beat up a law enforcement team member of the Sacred Academy, but also beat up all the people they had sent. How dare she? Luo Qingtong. You've gone too far. You've despised the Elders Association and ignored the rules of the Sacred Academy. Guards! The members of the Elders Association of the Sacred Academy flew into a rage. They were about to call people to arrest Luo Qingtong. Chapter 1066. Luo Qingtong's voice sounded. That's because they deserve to be beaten. Luo Qingtong's eyes were cold. She stood in the middle of the hall of the elders of the Sacred Academy and slowly walked to the front of the members of the law enforcement team. She lifted her leg with a sneer and kicked the leader of the law enforcement team out with a bang. Luo Qingtong. Before the members of the elders of the Sacred Academy could do anything, Luo Qingtong's cold voice sounded. Since the elders want to talk about the rules with me, then I'll talk about the rules with you. I'm still a student of the Sacred Academy of the Empire of Qin. Before I'm expelled from the Sacred Academy of the Empire of Qin, these members of the law enforcement team have no right to beat me up. Luo Qingtong sneered and flicked her sleeves. According to the rules of the Sacred Academy, if they beat me up, I'm qualified to fight back. Beat them up. Luo Qingtong lifted her leg and kicked another member of the law enforcement team out. That's because they deserve to be beaten up. Luo Qingtong had long known that the members of the elders of the Sacred Academy were up to no good. Why did they send people to catch her? Why? Even if someone accused her of using witchcraft, before she was officially expelled from the Sacred Academy of the Empire of Qin, she was still a student of the Sacred Academy of the Empire of Qin. These members of the law enforcement team dared to beat her up, let alone beat them up. Even if she beat them to death, what could the members of the elders of the Sacred Academy do to her? Did they really think that she was a little girl who had never seen the world? She would be beaten up by the members of the law enforcement team just because she was a little frightened by the complaint. Luo Qingtong's words instantly made the members of the elders of the Sacred Academy speechless. Previously, they had indeed thought that Luo Qingtong would be scared silly by this battle and wanted to teach her a lesson in advance. At the same time, they could also vent their resentment from being humiliated by her previously. They thought that Luo Qingtong wouldn't dare to fight back. He didn't expect her to be so bold and so meticulous. At this time, he had already been exposed for using sorcery, yet he still dared to be so high-profile and arrogant. Good. Good. All right. Everyone was so angry that their hearts hurt. They gritted their teeth and sneered at her. You're right this time. Luo Qingtong, the law enforcement team of the Sacred Academy attacked you. You didn't do anything wrong by fighting back. As the group of people spoke, their hearts were filled with hatred. Just bear with her for now. Once she was convicted of the crime, she would suffer a fate worse than death. She had to return all the slaps to her face. With that thought in mind, the group of elders of the Sacred Academy wanted to drag the members of the enforcement team away. He originally thought that using such a despicable method to pull down the Grand Principal and the others wasn't good. But now, looking at the saint token in Luo Qingtong's hand, he was so angry that he trembled all over. He wished he could drive Din and the others out of the sacred academy of the Empire of Qin right now. However, they didn't know that the saint token in Luo Qingtong's hand had nothing to do with Din at all. They were the spoils of war that she had obtained after defeating Saint Meng. Din had wanted to take it back. But he didn't succeed. Now that Luo Qingtong took out the saint token, these law enforcement team members made a big mistake by attacking her. Bang, bang, bang. Chapter 1068. Ah! Amid the shrill screams, the members of the law enforcement team were rolling on the ground. Their hearts were filled with regret. If they had known that provoking Luo Qingtong would lead to such a result, they would never have attacked her in order to curry favor with the elders of the Sacred Academy. It had nothing to do with them at all. It was the elders of the Sacred Academy who wanted to deal with Luo Qingtong. They only needed to bring her to the Sacred Academy. It was too late for them to regret. No one had expected that Luo Qingtong would have the Sacred Academy token. The latter had never been revealed, and had never been taken out. They were in pain and regretful. The shrill screams almost resounded throughout the hall of the elders of the Sacred Academy. Hearing these ear-piercing screams, the members of the Council of Elders of the Sacred Institute turned pale. Luo Qingtong's slap was very loud. They had sent these people to catch Luo Qingtong, but now they were crippled in front of them. And they couldn't do anything to Luo Qingtong. The group of people gritted their teeth so hard that the sound of grinding could be heard. Luo Qingtong, how are you? You're doing very well. The elders of the Sacred Academy pointed at her, their faces full of ferocity and anger. Of course I'm doing very well. Luo Qingtong's expression was indifferent as she squinted her eyes. These people wanted to deal with her. It was ridiculous. She was sure that the one who would be punished later would not be her. Well, didn't the elders of the Sacred Academy come to me to talk about cheating? We can start now. Luo Qingtong raised her hand and flicked her sleeves. Her face was indescribably careless, as if she didn't take the elders of the Sacred Academy seriously at all. The girl's face was gorgeous, delicate, enchanting, and domineering. Sitting on the wide chair like this, his aura instantly overwhelmed the group of elders of the Holy Academy opposite him. People who didn't know better would think that the people who were waiting for trial were the elders of the Sacred Academy. Looking at Luo Qingtong's domineering and careless appearance, the elders of the Sacred Academy gnashed their teeth even louder. Luo Qingtong, wait and see. She would regret it later. The elders of the Sacred Academy inhaled and exhaled again and again, and finally calmed down. If they couldn't calm down, they would probably faint on the spot. Good. Good. They said coldly, let's start. The rhythm of the elders of the Sacred Academy was smashed by Luo Qingtong's unconventional moves. They were going to punish Luo Qingtong directly, and then snorted and led her to confess the matter. In this way, they could vent their anger and see Luo Qingtong in a sorry state. Then, they could finally beat her to the bottom of the mud. But the result? The elders of the Sacred Academy looked at Luo Qingtong, who was sitting comfortably on the chair. The word start was incomparably sullen and gloomy. The Soul Institute's great teacher and the others also stared sullenly at the scene. This is that Luo Qingtong. Shen Chuyue looked at Luo Qingtong, who was sitting on the wide chair, and said with a serious expression. When Luo Qingtong arrived, they were prepared to see a joke. In the end, they saw a joke. However, it wasn't the joke of Luo Qingtong that they had imagined. Instead, it was the joke of the elders of the Sacred Academy, who had been humiliated to the point that they wished they were dead. Shen Chuyue, who saw Luo Qingtong for the first time, finally understood why her husband, daughter, and Yuanma had suffered so much at the hands of Luo Qingtong. She was indeed not ordinary. But so what? Chapter 1069. Shen Chuyue's eyes were filled with murderous intent. Luo Qingtong also looked over at Su Diheng and the others after the elders of the Sacred Academy spoke. When she saw Shen Chuyue's murderous gaze, she suddenly narrowed her eyes. Who was the other party? She looked up slightly and glanced at the position and distance between Su Diheng and Shen Chuyue. She suddenly guessed the relationship between the two. If she guessed correctly, the other party should be Su Jinyue's mother. As expected, they were a family. Were they here to seek revenge from him? When Luo Qingtong came, she had already guessed that Su Diheng and Imo Qinxian were probably behind this. Now it seemed that it was indeed so. However, Su Jinyue's mother was also involved in this matter. It was said that the wife of the Soul Institute's great teacher had an extraordinary status. Su Jinyue relied on their love and care to be very arrogant in the Sacred Academy of the Empire of Qin. Almost no one dared to provoke her. Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes slightly. At this moment, the people from the Qingwei group arrived. Junior sister Luo. Yu Qingwei led her people to Luo Qingtong's side and saw the latter sitting on a wide chair with a relaxed and comfortable look. She was instantly stunned. Why was this not the scene she had imagined? Yu Qingwei's expression was blank. She thought that she would see Luo Qingtong being targeted when she came over. She had originally planned to bring the people from the Qingwei group to block for Luo Qingtong if the elders of the Sacred Academy went too far. But now, what was going on? The group was a little confused. However, Yu Qingwei still subconsciously led the people from the Qingwei group to stand on Luo Qingtong's side. Senior sister Qingwei. Luo Qingtong was also a little surprised to see the people from the Qingwei group. She didn't expect Yu Qingwei to bring the people from the Qingwei group here. Although she had left in front of the Qingwei group. However, in such a situation, wouldn't most people be wise enough to protect themselves? Junior sister Luo, don't be afraid. Yu Qingwei's lips couldn't help but twitch. Luo Qingtong didn't look scared at all. Her lips twitched as she continued, I've already informed His Highness the Crown Prince and the Grand Principal. The two of them should be here soon. Yu Qingwei had just finished speaking when Ma Chenyi and the Grand Principal appeared outside the door at the same time. The two of them were followed by a group of people. They were in a hurry as they strode into the hall. Qingtong. Girl, are you all right? The Grand Principal took a step forward and rushed in front of Luo Qingtong. Nothing must happen to this girl. Otherwise, that fiend Yi Qianxian would tear down the empire of Qin's Holy Academy. And it was the kind that couldn't be stopped. The Grand Principal's figure was anxious and Ma Chenyi wasn't much better behind him. He stepped through the door with a heavy expression. After seeing that Luo Qingtong was safe and sound, his expression relaxed a little. Whether it was in terms of justice or personal relations, he didn't want to see anything happen to Luo Qingtong. First Elder. Why did your Elders' Council attack Luo Qingtong? Ma Chenyi's voice was cold and dignified. His gaze swept over the members of the law enforcement team who were wailing on the ground and his expression instantly darkened. His expression was sullen. At this moment, the might of the Crown Prince of the Empire of Qin was fully displayed. Chapter 1070. They attacked Luo Qingtong. It was Luo Qingtong who attacked them, okay? That group of law enforcement team members were disabled by her. The group of people stared at Ma Chenyi and others, speechless for a long time. However, Mo Qinxian and others looked at the arrival of Grand Dean and Ma Chenyi and smiled coldly. It seems that everyone is here. Mo Qinxian chuckled and stood up. He looked at Ma Chenyi and said, Brother, you don't have to complain for Luo Qingtong. She's fine. It's the law enforcement team members who are in trouble. However, Grand Dean even gave the saint token to Luo Qingtong to play with. This protection is really rare. However, although you have a good relationship with Luo Qingtong, it's not right to cheat for her and find sorcery for her to attack you and Mo. What do you mean? Ma Qinyi came in a hurry. The member of the Qingwei group who came to report only said that something happened to Luo Qingtong, but did not say what happened. Ma Qinyi came in a hurry. Now it seemed that Ma Qinyi and others actually accused Luo Qingtong of using sorcery. Moreover, he had even plotted against him and the Grand Supreme Dean. Thinking of this, Ma Qinye's heart suddenly froze. No wonder he found out that Imo Qinxian was investigating Luo Qingtong. He originally wanted to remind the latter. But he did not expect that before he could do it, the other party attacked. Brother, you should understand what I mean. And Grand Dean, you should also understand. Mo Qinxian smiled sinisterly. He looked indifferent and looked at Ma Qinyi and Grand Dean calmly. Today, these two people, neither of them could escape. They would all be unlucky together with Luo Qingtong. It was a pity that Yi Luo was not here. Otherwise, he would also be dealt with. Mo Qinxian thought and smiled coldly. Grand Dean stood beside Luo Qingtong. After seeing that the latter was fine, he immediately breathed a sigh of relief. Then he heard Mo Qinxian say that he gave the saint token to Luo Qingtong to play with. In an instant, he almost could not breathe. That saint token was not given by him. He was wronged. The Grand Supreme Headmaster felt a wave of depression in his heart. He didn't realize that his focus had deviated. But Ma Qinye's face was cold. I don't know what you're talking about. Luo Qingtong used sorcery to cheat, how could this be possible? Knowing that Luo Qingtong was the princess of Chu, Mo Qinxian didn't believe it at all. Humph. I knew that you would not admit it. Fortunately, we were prepared. As Mo Qinxian spoke, he threw out the information he had found about Luo Qingtong. Of course, Luo Qingtong was the great Qin Empire's princess. He did not find out. At this moment, he raised his head slightly and looked at Ma Qinyi coldly. Here is all the information about Luo Qingtong's cultivation, strength, and talent. Luo Qingtong, can you explain how you could have the same ice soul seal as you and Mo and use the same soul skill as him during the gambling battle? You are just an ordinary martial artist and have never shown any soul seal talent. Besides, the soul seal formed by the cold air in you and Mo's body is different from other ice soul seals. Even if you really have an ice soul seal, it is absolutely impossible to use you and Mo's unique soul skill. Chapter 1071. Mo Qinxian sneered. He glanced at the girl who was sitting on the chair without any change in her expression. Luo Qingtong looked at him indifferently. It turned out that Yi Qianxian said that Mo Qinxian and the others were investigating her just to set up this trap of cheating and using witchcraft to deal with her. Luo Qingtong's lips curled up slightly. If so, Mo Qinxian and the others found the wrong way. As Luo Qingtong thought so, Su Xiaoxiao and the others beside her were also surprised. It turned out that Mo Qinxian and the others caught their boss with great fanfare through the Elders Guild because of this. The group of people suddenly felt speechless. When they thought of the false soul seal on their bodies, they felt more confident about this trial. If Mo Qinxian and the others wanted to slander their boss through this, they would end up badly. It was a slap in the face. As the group of people thought about it, their hearts, which had been in their throats, were immediately put back at ease. On the contrary, Ma Qinyi and the Grand Dean were nervous after hearing Mo Qinxuan's words. They didn't believe that Luo Qingtong used witchcraft. They were afraid that Mo Qinxian and the others were so well prepared that Luo Qingtong couldn't defend herself. Oh no! The two couldn't help but feel nervous. Looking at their expressions, Mo Qinxian burst into laughter. Luo Qingtong and the others couldn't defend themselves. But it wouldn't end here. He sneered, threw the documents in his hand to the ground, and then said, "You can't say anything, right? Because you helped Luo Qingtong to practice witchcraft. So that she could attack Yuan Mo." He said coldly to Luo Qingtong, "You hate Yuan Mo, so you didn't hesitate to destroy him. The collapse of the cold air in his body was the result of your witchcraft, right?" Mo Qinxian sneered. "After you disabled him, you said that he deserved it. Push the blame to him for being ungrateful in the past. In any case, Yuan Mo is already crippled. He can't defend himself. Even if I try to defend myself, no one will listen. Everyone will only think that he's trying to slander you. It's a pity that you were too vicious and exposed yourself in the end." Mo Qinxian said righteously. Luo Qingtong's lips twitched at his words. Mo Qinxian really had a talent for telling stories. She almost believed the story. Hearing Mo Qinchuan's words, the elders of the Academy of Saint Academy, who had just been humiliated by Luo Qingtong, suddenly shouted angrily as if they had caught something that could be used against them. "Luo Qingtong, the evidence is here. What else do you have to say?" They raised their hands and pointed at the documents that Mo Qinxian threw out. "And the two of you, in order to protect Luo Qingtong, you actually found sorcery for her to cultivate. Especially you, Grand Dean. You helped Luo Qingtong to harm the students of the Saint Academy. What right do you have to be in charge of the Saint Academy of the Empire of Qin?" The group of elders of the Sacred Institute said righteously. In an instant, behind the Grand Dean, the group of mentors who followed the Grand Dean changed their expressions. Obviously, the elders of the Saint Academy wanted to take this opportunity to get rid of the Grand Dean. For a woman, you didn't hesitate to find sorcery for her to practice. As the Crown Prince of the Empire of Qin, your behavior is very inappropriate. It's okay that the Grand Supreme Dean is muddle-headed. Why can't you figure it out? As he spoke, he deliberately sighed heavily and said, "If Father knows this, he will be very disappointed." "Brother, why do you have to do this?" Ma Qingyi looked at Mo Qinxian coldly and didn't speak. On the contrary, Yu Qingwei stood out at once. Mo Qinxian, you deliberately set up the Crown Prince. She looked sullen. She had been watching from the side just now. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.